Hi, this is Kevin from Passion for the Word. Get the quick stuff out of the way, all the shares, likes, pray for us, all that sort of stuff. We'll have the links in the section below. We've got a Facebook page. Go there. We're not doing a whole lot with it yet, but we plan on it. Just got to get my IT person busy, and she's got to get me busy on it. If you'd like me to come speak at your church, contact us through any one of the several methods to contact us, and I'd be happy to go there. Today we're going to talk about Lazarus. Now, we're not talking about Lazarus and the rich man. We'll cover that in another video. There's some really neat stuff there. The Lazarus and the rich man episode, actually, we learn probably more in that section about the afterlife. Not so much heaven as the other end of it. Probably more from that parable than, or not parable, because that's not a parable, but more from that episode. But we're not talking about that Lazarus. Today we're talking about Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha, and his being brought back to life. So we're going to be mostly in John chapter 11. Now a certain man was sick, named Lazarus, of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary which appointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sisters sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified. So Jesus already... He knows this. He knows exactly what's going to happen. He's fully aware. This shows the foreknowledge of God, and Jesus as God. He knew exactly what was taking place here. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. That seems kind of strange to us. It's like, hey, Lazarus is sick. We know you love him. Hurry, he's going to die. Jesus says he loves him, but going to wait a little bit. He's building this. Then after that, he saith to his disciple, Let us go into Judea again, which is where their house was at. His disciples say unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again? Now, by of late, it really implies in the Greek, just within a few days ago, just a very short time ago, the people of Judea tried to kill him. It was not a safe place for him to go. And the disciples were worried about this. So Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. I had to do some checking on this, because I wanted to get the full meaning of this, and I consulted with several different sources that I trust, and I think I've got it now, and I'm going to explain it to you the way that I understand it, but that's all. This is the way I understand this passage. Are there not 12 hours in the day? That stands for, there's an appointed time for things to take place. An appointed time. If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of the world. So if you're working in the appointed time, you won't stumble. If you do God's work in God's time, you're not going to stumble, because you see the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, walking outside of God's will, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. That's to the best of my ability. That's how I understand that today. God may reveal something else to me in that, but to the best of my ability, that's the way I've come to understand that passage. These things said he, and after that he saith unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go, that I may awake him out of sleep. Then said his disciples, Lord, if he sleep, he shall do well. they're not really understanding it. Howbeit Jesus spake of his death, but they thought that he had spoken of taking rest and sleep. Then Jesus said unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead. Now, an interesting thing, in the New Testament, there's several different times where it refers to death as sleep. But the only time it does that is when it's talking about a believer. When a non-believer is dead, it never refers to them as sleeping. Only a believer is sleeping. Now, the disciples, when they thought, when Jesus said Lazarus is sleeping, they took that to mean he was resting, which is, when you're sick, that's a good thing. That's why they were saying, well, that's good for him. And Jesus had to explain it to him. He said, don't. Lazarus is dead. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent you may believe. It's a strange thing to say. If he had been there, he could have, just spoke a word and Lazarus would have been healed. But he's saying he's glad he wasn't there. So Lazarus gets sicker. It seems like a strange thing. But he says he's glad he was not there, to the intent ye may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him. Sometimes bad things happen in our life for God to get glory in them. Sometimes with certain people, especially when people become saved, a lot of people have to hit rock bottom before they'll turn to Christ. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you seems like the best thing. Sometimes the worst thing what seems like the worst thing turns out to be one of the best things. I'll put it that way. Sometimes bad things happen for the glory of God, so God can get the glory out of it. And that's what's happening here. Lazarus' death was so that Jesus could raise him from the dead. If Lazarus didn't die, there would have been no resurrection of Lazarus at that point. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus. Now these are both, the name Thomas actually means twin, and so does Didymus, but there's two different languages here. I think Thomas was the Greek, Didymus may have been the Aramaic, I'm not sure, but the two words mean the same thing, just in a different language. And Thomas was the one that was doubting Thomas. He's the one that wouldn't believe that it was Jesus till he stuck his fingers in the holes. He says unto his fellow disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. So he's being kind of cynical. He's, we'll follow him. He's willing to follow him to death. He's thinking we're going to go there and they're going to kill us. But okay, let's go. Then when Jesus came, he found that he had lain in the grave 4 days already. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off, and many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Now 15 furlongs, that's about 2 miles. Now as I understand Jewish culture, at that time, when someone would die, for 3 days they would actually have professional mourners there. People that I guess they could cry particularly well or do the wails, whatever. They would have professional mourners for the first 3 days. On the 4th day is when the family and friends would come to comfort the survivors. So we're at the 4th day. There's a bigger crowd here now because this would be like the actual funeral time. The people that knew Lazarus, that know his family, they're there now. It's not just the professionals getting paid to cry at the stone. I know it's a strange thing, but so now we've got a bigger crowd there. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him. But Mary sat still in the house. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it to thee. Now that's some pretty strong faith. She trusts Jesus. Whatever he wants, he'll get from God. Jesus saith unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. Martha's not quite getting it, because she says, Martha saith unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus says to her, Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. We were all dead before we became saved. There's a whole tie-in here. This story has an underlying theme to it that we'll get to, but this is like one of the first hints. Though he were dead, yet he shall live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? He asked her. She saith unto him, Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. And when she had so said, she went her way, and called Mary, her sister, secretly, saying, The Master is come, and calleth for thee. As soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came unto him. I want to back up. There's one point I missed. If you remember back when Jesus said, Lazarus is dead, there was no second message. When he told the disciples that Lazarus is sleeping, and they thought he was just resting, he says, Lazarus is dead. This is another thing. Jesus knew this supernaturally. There was no second messenger. There was only one messenger sent from Mary and Martha, at least that's recorded. One messenger that Lazarus was sick. Jesus knew he was dead already. I meant to say that a while back and I forgot. Now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in that place where Martha met him. The Jews then which were with her in the house and comforted her, when they saw Mary, that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, She goeth into the grave to weep there. So now Mary's coming out to meet Jesus. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was, and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. So here she's also showing, faith. Jesus had all the ability in the world to prevent his death. They've never seen Jesus raise someone from the dead, so this is a big step. This is also the last miracle recorded in the Gospel of John of Jesus. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit, and was troubled, and said, Where have ye laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. I don't know if you know what an empath is. An empath is someone that seems to somehow pick up on other people's emotions. If they're around people that are sad, they feel that sadness. If they're around people that are angry, they just feel that anger from within. Some people don't know if it's real or not. That's immaterial. I think we could say that of empaths, Jesus would have been the ultimate empath. He knew Lazarus was coming back. He knew Lazarus was going to was going to come back to life in just a matter of a few minutes. Let's go to the next verse here. The shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. I believe he's weeping because he's feeling their pain. He knows the hurt that they're feeling. They're not sad because they didn't get a new pony or a new tunic or whatever. Their loved one had died. They're genuinely sad over this. This is just a very difficult thing. Mary and Martha had just lost their brother. They're sad. He's feeling their pain. He also, I believe, death was never part of God's plan. The original plan was for man to be immortal. It was only when Eve was deceived by the serpent that she ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then Adam ate to save Eve, that death came into the world. It was never part of God's plan. So I think being confronted with death, facing death, I think probably also caused Jesus to groan in the spirit, to be that, to face it. He's feeling their pain. That's what I think he wept. Then said Jesus, then said the Jews, Behold how he loved him. And some of them said, Could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus therefore, again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. So he's feeling all this pain. Jesus said, take ye away the stone. Now notice, every miracle that Jesus did, he could have pointed at that stone and it moved. None of his miracles were anything that a man could do, even a group of men. Doesn't matter how many men you have or how many people you have, you can't immediately turn water into wine. That water that became wine, that wine was crushed from grapes that never grew on vines that never lived. We haven't got the ability to do that. Every miracle Jesus did was something of that sort. So he could have pointed at that stone and just like that, and that stone would have moved. He could have snapped his finger, the stone would have turned into a giant marshmallow, whatever. He told them to move it because they had the capability to do that. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh. Gotta love that in the King James, how he stinketh. For he had been dead 4 days. And this is just, this is part of one of the two reasons why I believe he waited around 2 days before he headed out. One, there's no doubt that Lazarus is dead. He's starting to stinketh. The rot has started in his body. And two, by waiting till the 4th day, the 3 days of professional mourners has passed, and now the family and friends are. There's a larger crowd to see this last miracle. They're going to see a man that stinketh come back to life. Jesus saith unto her, Said I not unto thee that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? And they're just about to see that. And when they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And I knew that thou hearest me always, but because the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. So he's praying out loud right now, not for his benefit or for God to hear him, but for the people around him to know that he is praying to God. He's calling to God for this to happen. He's thanking God. He starts it with, I thank thee. That's the beginning of his prayer. That should be the beginning of our prayer. And when he thus had spoken, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. I don't know if you ever heard of Carmen. He was a big Christian contemporary singer got really big in the 80s. I think he actually started in the 70s. He's got a great song called Lazarus, Come Forth that still, whenever I hear it, just the hair on the back of my neck just rises. Look it up. It's about this very episode. Just kind of a neat video. Little 80s-ish, so give it that. Remember when it was made. The big question is, why did he say Lazarus? Why not just come forth? I think if we go back a little bit in John, we'll get the answer. For as the Father hath life in himself, so hath he given to the Son to have life in himself, and hath given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice. That's John 5:26-28, just 6 chapters earlier. All that are in the grave shall hear his voice. It's possible, there's some great scholars that believe, if he had just said, come forth, all the dead would have risen. He had to say Lazarus, so only Lazarus would answer the call. Because the day is coming in which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice. It wasn't that day yet. And he that was dead came forth, Lazarus, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus saith unto them, Loose him and let him go. I think this is a predicament a lot of Christians find themselves in. And he that was dead came forth. We're all dead until we become saved. And he that was dead came forth, saved. Now, granted, Lazarus was saved before, but there's an awful lot of these stories in the Bible that there's the overall picture, And then there's the underlying picture beneath it. And in some cases, there's another one beneath that, another one beneath that. So we're going to examine an underlying story here that I think parallels the life of a lot of Christians. They were dead, and they come forth. They get saved. But they're bound hand and foot with grave clothes. The dead life still has them. And his face was bound with a napkin. If you're still wearing your grave clothes, you're still a victim to sin. You are still struggling with sins. Now, great, you're never going to be sinless, but every day you should be able to sin less. As you grow in Christ and as you read your Bible, you'll find things that today bother you, but yesterday seemed fine. On Facebook, there's a thing called Facebook Memories that you can look back and see everything you posted 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago on this very date. I love that. There's a lot of things about it. It jogs the memory, but I can look back on things that I posted 8 or 9 years ago that I thought were completely fine, that today I wouldn't post them. I see them as inappropriate today. They didn't bother me then. That's the growth you find. You're always willing out, recognizing new sin in your life, new things that you've got to get rid of. But the old sin, you shouldn't be struggling with that. If you're struggling with that, you're still in your grave clothes. You need to shed your grave clothes. Jesus saith unto them, loose him and let him go. When you've shed your grave clothes, you become dangerous. The next chapter. This is Caiaphas and the others. Lazarus is dangerous now. He's been risen from the dead. He's shed his grave clothes. He's a threat to everything that the Pharisees know. But the chief priests consulted that they might put Lazarus also to death. The fact that he was risen by Jesus to them is cause to put him back to death. He's that much a threat. Because that by reason of him, many of the Jews went away and believed on Jesus. He was bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound with a napkin. When they loosed him, he became dangerous because he was able to lead a lot of people to Christ. Question, are you dangerous? Are you a threat to everything that's against Christ? You should be. That should be a goal. You should be a threat to everything that's non-Christian. You should shed your grave clothes and become dangerous. I think that's one of the messages that's tucked away in the story of Lazarus being brought back to life. We should all strive to be dangerous. Get on the armor of God and go out and be a threat to anything that's not Christian. Thank you. God bless, and we'll see you next time.